Hello and good morning everyone, and thank you for joining our Citrix and Microsoft Azure webinar today. So we're joined here by Alex Hill from Citrix, who will be going through the webinar with you.
Okay, thanks Amy. Just going to start up the session here. So good morning everyone. My name's Alex Hill from Citrix. I work for our readiness team in Northern Europe, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the synergy and the solutions we have for all of you with Microsoft Azure. And it's actually a really good time to kind of talk about this. So some of you may know that Microsoft Ignite is happening over in the US this week, so they're kind of big technical conference and some of the big launches, and we're obviously there in quite a big way. And actually we did some demos yesterday and announced some things yesterday which I'll touch on towards the end of today's session that are very relevant to today's conversation. So I just wanted to kind of give you a rough agenda. So I'll talk a little bit about the Microsoft and Citrix relationship. We'll have a look at all the solutions on Azure, but then I want to kind of cover some of the other areas that will become clear why I'm covering those areas as we get towards the end of the webinar. So what we do currently around Windows 10, 365 and Skype for Business, plus Windows Server 2016. But then what we're going to do with those going forward, so some of the announcements we made back in May, June time, and also built upon yesterday around what that will mean going forwards for all of you as Azure customers. And then, as Amy says, we'll open up for Q&A. So it should be around 30 to 35 minutes, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers as we get towards the end of the session today. So if you have a look, you know, for those of you who are the long-term, obviously, Citrix customers, and equally probably, or certainly all Microsoft customers, you know, we've got one of the longest and most powerful relationships in probably IT at the moment. We are building on that relationship. That relationship has been around for a long, long time, stretching back to NT351 to do unique services for all of you between the two organizations, not just in Azure, but outside Azure as well, for you to be able to go and deliver your Microsoft environments to the end user with the best user experience, but also giving them choice of how they want to consume that. And that's only going to grow going forward. So you might have seen some of the, you know, recent announcements from Kirill Tatarinov, our CEO, but also from Brad Anderson, so one of the cloud VPs at Microsoft, around how we're working together to build much more effective solutions for you to deliver your apps and your desktops and your communications from Microsoft as well. So obviously we're going to focus on the Azure piece today, but I wanted to quickly cover some of the other pieces we're doing, because when I tie it all together at the end, it's really going to make sense for you and become a really powerful solution for all of you on the call today. So what I want to do is really focus on what we do right now today. So what is available to you all in terms of how we can drive and develop Azure solutions for you going forward. Now, you all know kind of the business drivers that are driving your businesses or your sales or your departments towards the cloud. So, you know, scalability is a key thing for you. And we're looking at that in terms of what we can do when I talk about something called Citrix Cloud in a second. Cloud economics, really about making sure you're getting the best return, that your investments are developing the best return for your businesses as well, helping you to focus on what's core to you in your IT departments or the wider business as well, plus building out business continuity, disaster recovery, and using this as a testing and development area. So Azure, as you're probably all aware, you know, it's a huge solution. But we want to make sure you can utilize that solution, but also overcome a lot of the hurdles that you may come across when you're trying to move to an Azure solution. So whether it's compliancy, you know, regulatory requirements around where we can keep data, how we can access data, or how or where we put applications, how we maintain security, and I'll talk a little bit about that, how we can optimize integration with your existing environments, but also anything else that's uncertain going forwards. How can we manage, how can we maintain, how can we deliver back, for example, to our end users, when now our, to a certain extent, can be anywhere in the world, or certainly a lot more remote to our users than it would be if it was in our data center today. So Azure, is a fantastic platform, enterprise grade, all over the world, 36 regions, 100 plus data centers worldwide. Recently the UK infrastructure opened, much bigger than a lot of the other players in the market, and there's a fantastic SLA uptime, around 99.95%. So it's a huge platform, a great solution for all of you to kind of build in those cost models to move some infrastructure and consolidate infrastructure in your data centers and move that out to the cloud. And if you look at how Azure is being driven into business and being adopted by you or equally organizations similar to all of you on the call today, 60% of the 500 largest companies in America are using Azure, and that's growing. They're getting 10,000 new customers every week moving on to Azure. They are building data centers at an amazing rate, and I'll give you a link to a co-hosted webinar we ran with Microsoft a couple of weeks ago, where a guy called Brett Anderson, who's a VP Cloud, talks about how quickly they're expanding, how quickly they're building capacity into Azure to meet the needs of their customers. Huge growth rates you can see there, and 140 plus countries, 36 regions have access to Azure data centers and services. So it's a big part of IT today and will become a bigger part of IT tomorrow, and I'm sure many of you are already consuming services, consuming infrastructure from Azure, and if you're not, you're probably looking at planning and how you can use that infrastructure as well. Now we are also putting a lot of infrastructure and a lot of time and effort, both from a product perspective but also an engineering perspective, around supporting and delivering from Azure. So although, as a business, Citrix, we're not going to provide a cloud infrastructure, and we will work in many, many clouds, Azure is, to a greater extent, our preferred or cloud of choice when we go and do things initially. So, what we're trying to do is help you to focus on your core business imperatives and drive those growth and sales and marketing infrastructures, give you that capacity, infinite capacity, but also give you capacity on demand, and I'll come back to that as we come into the rest of the session. Make it cost efficient for you and make it available and reliable for your businesses. And we're really driving some of this. So what we have today are 3 proven scenarios, and this is currently what you can do right now by talking to Bytes. So you can go in and actually take advantage of these 3 solutions right now, and that's hosting your desktops and applications on Azure, hosting and delivering your data securely and effectively from Azure, but also blending it into other data locations outside of Azure that you may already have or be looking at, and also driving NetScalers, driving ADCs and security from Azure as well. So let's kind of talk about those 3 areas to begin with as we go through. So what we're able to do currently, right now, is actually host our XenApp and XenDesktop products. And for those of you not familiar with XenApp and XenDesktop, XenApp is our Windows application virtualization solution, so the ability to push all your Windows applications back into the data center and deliver them out to the end user remotely, so the end user accesses those applications from the data center. And XenDesktop is a similar idea, but specifically around Windows 10, Windows 7, or even Linux desktops as well. And both of those products are fully validated to run in Azure. In fact, you can go into Marketplace today on Azure and spin up a XenApp trial from the Marketplace. So fully integrated. And we'll have similar functionality going forward with XenDesktop, and I'll talk about that towards the end of today's sessions. So we can actually help you to move your applications up into Azure and maybe have some of the data follow them, because that's really important as well, and then be able to help you deliver those applications or deliver those desktops back to the end user from the Azure data center, but without the cost of performance for the end user. So it means we can accelerate your time to market and revenue. We can give you quicker time to migrate. We can help you to focus on that growth and infrastructure. We can give you scalability, control costs, because we can manage this, and I'll come on to how we can help you to manage this in a second through something called Citrix Cloud. And we can give you global availability and load balancing. So it's a great solution. It's taking our existing products but making sure they function effectively in Azure. They're almost now part of Azure. As I say, XenApp's available from the marketplace from a trial perspective. You can go in and spin up XenApp servers very quickly and effectively. There's lots of white papers, there's lots of deployment guides, there's lots of validation guides, and equally we also have a specific cost calculator to show you the benefits of putting XenApp and XenDesktop into Azure. So we have lots of customers doing this already. You'll see lots of case studies. I'll point you towards some more resources in a second where you can read more about this. But it's a really fantastic solution to help you gain the advantages of Azure but not have to take any penalty for performance or delivery of performance back to your end users over Windows apps and desktops. Now currently we do that today, and when I get back to the end of today's session I'm going to talk to you about what we're doing as well to improve that even further going forwards, to make it even more adoptable, consumable for you all, and to make it a much, much more integrated solution. So that's kind of XenApp and XenDesktop, but equally, what about security? What about how we can deliver secure infrastructures back to you or your end users from Azure? And that's where we're starting to put our NetScaler product into Azure again. Again, this is fully compliant, fully validated, available in there as well already in Azure. And for those of you who don't know, NetScaler is our application delivery controller product. So it sits there, it load balances pretty much anything you want it to load balance. It does global load balancing, so it'll load balance across multiple data centers around the world, not just Azure data centers, but any data center you use in a private cloud infrastructure or from a public cloud provider as well. Plus it can provide web application security in front of any web applications or infrastructure you put up in Azure, management, and equally it can be an SSL VPN, but it can give you granular access. So it's a smart SSL VPN, so it will look at EPAs, endpoint analysis, and decide what it gives you based on the results of those endpoint analysis scans. Right down to, if you're coming in from a jailbroken device, an iPhone for example, it will change the access parameters as well. So it means in the first place, we can securely connect your private data center to the Azure cloud. We can make that simple connection, make it very easy to manage and maintain, but make it very, very secure. We can then deliver things like Azure Active Directory services. We can, like I say, connect those clouds together, and we can make sure anything delivered from Azure out to your end users, or indeed out to your customers, can be secured right from the point of access into Azure by a NetScaler in Azure. So again, it's fully integrated, it's designed to sit there, it's designed to secure those infrastructures, it's designed to be reactive, to make sure that we're reacting to the user or the customer's requirements, but also maintaining a very, very, very high level of security. And that's going to become even more important going forward. So that's going to have much more functionality into Azure as we go into the rest of this year and next year, which I'll talk about again as we come towards the end of the presentation. But again, that's available today. If you're not certain of what the NetScaler can do for you, but you're interested in more information around the NetScaler itself, please talk to Bytes after today and follow up. NetScaler is a massive part, a growing area for us within all of our customers like yourselves in terms of securing access, making sure we're compliant, making sure we're meeting regulatory compliances when we're potentially looking at cloud services or hybrid models as well. So, equally, moving on, ShareFile on Azure. So, that seems strange when we have OneDrive, some of you are consuming that through Office 365 or purchasing it separately. But what is ShareFile? Well, ShareFile is our cloud file and secure sharing solution. So it's our ability to take the idea, for example, of Dropbox from the commercial perspective, but apply it into a business structure. To make that sharing, that accessibility of documents from any device, any location, available to your end users, but make it secure, make it auditable, but also make it usable for the end user as well. And ShareFile, works on storage zones, so we can have what we call storage zones, which is basically just areas where we keep our data. We can use on-premise, where you may want to keep all your data sovereignty. For that data, it needs to be under data sovereignty for compliancy purposes, but we can also blend it into Azure securely, where you may want to keep other data that's maybe not as important or not as compliant, and you don't want to pay for the storage on-premise. You want to pay for that storage as a subscription model or a consumable model for yourselves as well. And we can mix that for the end user, so we can have ShareFile. We can have ShareFile working in both environments with data, but to the user it looks like a single pane of glass for my data points as well. It also solves that Dropbox problem. It empowers you to have instant access to data, integrates with all the services you get from Azure, so we can front-end SharePoint, Office 365, OneDrive for business, and network shares as well that you may have on-premise, but equally your OneDrive and Office 365 in the cloud. And we can then have that multi-tenant environment for you or for your service provider to host on your behalf as well. Plus, we can then use, as I say, Azure as the storage zone. So again, we can manage that data sovereignty, compliance, we can increase the security, you get full auditing, full control, full rights over everything. But equally, when we're using Azure as a storage zone, you can encrypt all your data in Azure, and only you have that encryption key. So although you're keeping data in Azure, and you may be worried about people being able to access that data, they can't, because only you have the encryption key. Not even Microsoft or the Azure infrastructure employees have access to that key to de-encrypt your data. So only you can de-encrypt all that data in what we call that storage zone, where all your users' information is. So equally we can do this. We can then start to help some of you who may have presences across the globe to move all that data storage to an Azure plane closer to your end users. And you can mix and match, you can auto-direct the user to the right storage zone in the right Azure plane that's closest to your customer or your end user, so that we can make sure performance is high, but again, maintaining that security, because if the data needs to be secure and data sovereignty means you can hold that data in that control plane, then we can actually help you to move and still be compliant around that data, even if it's sat in Azure, because you are holding that encryption key. Plus, like I say, we can front-end OneDrive, 365, SharePoint in the cloud as well, and we can make it a really seamless solution for the customer, because it's one access point. It's our ShareFile website or our ShareFile client for the right device, and they'll see all of these access or data points as a single pane of glass, make it easy and consumable for the user to pick up. So that's what we currently do, and there's loads of information that I can send you off to go and have a look. There's some, there's a Windows Azure design guide. It says service provider hosted desktops. It applies to equally when you're designing and running your Azure infrastructures. Citrix customers, the NetScaler on Azure, what it does for you, how it can help you to secure and optimize your Azure environments, and also ShareFile on Azure as well. So how that works, what it means, how we make sure data is secure and compliant, and how we make that single pane of glass view and accessibility interesting and available for your end users. Equally, Talk to Bytes, they can give you more information on that piece, but there's those links will send you off to a great website called citrixandmicrosoft.com, and there's equally lots and lots more information and lots of documents and overviews that you can have that are jointly produced by Citrix and Microsoft. And all of these are joint solutions. So they're validated by Citrix and they're validated by Microsoft as well to work and be part of the strategy. And again, we're building on that strategy, and I keep previewing this, but that's what I'll come to towards the end of today's session. The last piece I want to talk about on this bit is something we call Citrix Cloud. Now this is our central management plane for our products that's available to you all to be able to go and deploy and manage infrastrucures in many clouds, equally on-premise as well, but actually works fantastically well with Azure as well. And what I wanted to point out here is this can actually help us to then help you manage your Citrix Azure deployments, but also manage your on-premise deployments as well at the same time. So we have a single management plane that actually we run in Azure for you at Citrix, but it will manage your private clouds, your on-premise infrastructures, and then your public clouds through one single management console for our XenApp, XenDesktop, XenMobile, ShareFile products as well. So only we're helping you to run our products in Azure, we're helping you to manage them as well. And if you adopt Citrix Cloud, you also then start to get the idea of what we call Lifecycle Manager. And Lifecycle Manager is our automated solution to deploy into public clouds, and again there's some specific functions in there to help you deploy your XenApp and Xen desktop infrastructures into Azure. It understands Azure, it understands how to deploy our products, and it understands how to go and maintain and manage those products. And then once you've used it to deploy, what we can also use it to do is to manage your infrastructure based on load. Because obviously if you're consuming services from Azure, if something's sat there running but not actually delivering any, it's a cost. If there's a XenApp server that's sat there or a Xen desktop server and no one's connected to it and no one's running an application or a desktop from it, then there's a cost associated with that. So again, within Lifecycle Manager, which is a feature you get under Citrix Cloud, I get the ability to use something called Smart Scale, which is really our ability to increase or decrease and power off servers using Azure Resource Manager as and when we need the service. So if load's very light, it will shut down servers in Azure, but as load increases, it will increase the number of XenApp or Xen desktop servers in Azure based on load as and when we need them. So what you're not paying for is consumption that you're not using with your end users. So it's a really powerful tool as you look to Azure to help you to manage hybrid environments in the first place of our products, XenApp and Xen desktop. How you can also deploy our products into Azure, then how you can use your Azure consumptions more effectively without having to manually do anything to automate your infrastructures based on load. And again, I'm not going to go into detail on Citrix Cloud today. Talk to Bytes. We can help you to understand that product further, where it fits in, but that's a really key component of what we're going to be doing now with Microsoft and Azure, but also going forwards with Microsoft and Azure. And it's a really key product for those of you looking to adopt Citrix as solutions and technologies on Azure marketplaces. So I also wanted to cover some other pieces, and these are kind of more generic, less into Azure, but we're going to make sure that these work and help you to adopt some of these solutions because they're going to be key to you going forwards. And actually I'll tie these up at the end with what we're doing at Futures. So if we look at Office 365, obviously I think great adoption, massive adoption of 365. We're looking at this, from adopting different devices from 365 and looking at this as the best way, most effective way to run applications. 365 is at the center of this, and that's an Azure service, that's a consumable service, so it's still part of the Azure stack. You're getting your whole Microsoft infrastructure. It means you can move to that subscription licensing if you wish. It means you can centralize and potentially reduce maintenance, but can you? Because what we see within customers like yourselves is you can go and consume Office 365, but a lot of things don't work in the Office 365 online mode. We can't change the macros in Excel. We can't run Access from it, and if we're running on Access databases, which we find a lot of customers are, we can't run those in 365. Templates don't work, plugins don't work, which means then you have to go and install the Office suite and support locally on the device, which is probably one of the things you were looking to move away from because you don't want to have to maintain apps locally on the local device. So whereas, a lot of us may have started that 365 journey as saying, right, this is what we want. We want online, we want service, we want, SaaS-based Office. What we actually end up with is going back to delivering Office as we usually did with an Office 365 license, but still using the full suite of applications. So again, for some of you, it may be that the fact that we now can run XenApp in Azure next to where your 365 service is, so if you're using hosted Exchange, for example, or you're using Skype, PBX, or Skype as a service, or any of the Office pieces, we can still give you, and you can still use the online version of 365 with the web-based applications from the browser, but then for the users that may or want or demand the full Office suite, we can still deliver that as a service back to the user by putting XenApp in line and delivering the full Office suite through XenApp, and that fully integrates with 365. We can also activate through 365 as well, so we can take that activation key and pass it across to 365. So we're not, using up all your device licensing or your user licensing or breaking the rules there, and we fully work and understand that. So I just want to cover that because 365 is based in Azure. It can give you some great benefits, but also there can be some challenges when you want to go and do some more complicated things within Office. So we can run that, as a hosted application through XenApp. We can even run it through a hosted desktop through our XenDesktop product, or both, but you still get all the benefits of centralized subscription modeling, low maintenance, because even when we're delivering the full Office suite, that's all from a central XenApp or XenDesktop service, and you can realize some of the benefits of 365. Equally, a lot of you Microsoft-based organizations looking at Azure, maybe looking at different ways of running your unified comms, and probably most of you, if not all of you, are looking at or have deployed Skype for Business. And again, this is a big thing for us. It's not only when we run it on-premise, but also in Azure. We see it in all of our customers just about nowadays. You can see the stats there, and it's a big part of business, and it's a big part of what you need to deliver to your users for them to be successful. So for example, Citrix, we're moving to a new office in central London, and one of our goals for that office is to be a full Skype for Business office. So not have desk phones, but be available on Skype as soon as we touch down on a desk, and that will be our comms solution in that office. And that's one of our goals is when we open our new London office soon. But even as a hosted service, when we move it out to Azure, there's challenges there. We still need to put the app on the device. We still need to support and install it. That then goes back to breaking that cloud model of everything as a service, consume it as a service. I don't want to maintain or manage anything locally, which obviously leads to those high operating costs that you may have looked into a Skype service to break. Equally then, we've also got to be aware of some issues. So, if you look at how people use Skype, they'll use it for a chat, so you can have lots of chats. Now in that chat there can be lots of information. Certainly when I use it, there's a lot of information that maybe I don't want going public, whether it's gossip or whether it's to do with some future plans for the business. There's stuff I trust the app to look after and to maintain. If that can move to a group where even more people are putting in data and there's more and more sensitive data, that turns into a video and voice call. And then you start to go, okay, well, let's share this file so we can have a quick discussion about this new release we're about to release. Let's make sure we get the wording right or the pricing right. And all of that is probably cached on the device. And you may or may not know this, but there's actually malware out there to go and attack these caches. There was a recent incident of a piece of software that was actually designed to go and attack what was then Lync and Skype for Business infrastructure and clients to pull out all of this cache, whether it's files or chat data, which obviously if it's sensitive can be used against your businesses. So how do we stop that from happening but also make it accessible? Well, equally, we can make sure AV and everything's up to date, but if you're not wanting to manage all your devices anymore, that becomes difficult, if not impossible. And how do we make sure we get rid of this data, or how do we make sure actually this data maybe doesn't even exist on the local device? Plus, we want to make sure we give you a great experience. Skype traffic congest your networks. It can impact the data center or your consumption in Azure, for example, if you're running outside of a hosted Skype service, and can degrade the user experience. So what we've done is a big piece of work, and this is more than just a slide. This is actually engineering work. We've actually produced a feature, you can even call it a product, with Microsoft about how we can deliver Skype for Business through our XenApp and XenDesktop products. And it's called the HDX Real-Time Optimization Pack for Skype for Business. Now this is the only solution that has been worked on jointly with Microsoft to deliver Skype across virtualized environments. So we can actually give you Skype for Business as a hosted application, but still give you all the great functionality, unified comms, presence, video, voice that you wanted Skype for in the first place, integration into that as well. Plus we'll support all the devices you may have bought to run Skype, so phone devices, cameras, other devices, but running as a central service, which means all that cache, all that sensitive data, all that management is now contained within the Azure service or whatever service you decide to consume. And we've got joint customers, we've got joint solutions out there, 10,000 users in production now using it, and it means you can start to run Skype as a service for your end users and customers. Which means, we can break the traditional idea. If Skype is hosted currently, it's all sat in the data center, everything goes back from the user, all traffic goes back between the users, and it all goes through your data center. Which means, if you're running this in a virtualized environment, for example, that can be quite congested, it can lead to a bit of decrease in performance, and, not a great solution for the customer. If we put the real-time HTX optimization pack in, we can still run it as a hosted application. We can get great usability, great video, great voice, but equally that client is sat back in the data center. There's nothing sat down on the user's device. But actually, if those two users can see each other and they're running a XenApp session of Skype for Business, why not let them talk directly to each other? Why not let them talk peer-to-peer? And again, we can do some really clever things around, well, actually, if we've got two users using what we call a published application version of Link or Skype for Business, we can actually say, well, if they can see each other, let's do that connection directly rather than go back through the virtual desktops. So it means you can run Skype as a hosted application, deliver back to your end users, but also maintain a great service, maintain great performance, and maintain a great Skype for Business solution. And again, this is again a great way of moving that service back into Azure, but delivering performance to users. And it's a joint solution from both organizations. And, a great quote there from Brad Anderson, the guy I mentioned earlier, VP Enterprise Client Mobility and Cloud now, Skype for Business and Citrix, only way to use Skype, and hosted desktops or hosted apps as well together. So just coming towards the end now, I just want to point out, when you're looking at Azure and 2016 with Citrix, we're now supporting that from day one release. It's already supporting it, and we'll obviously continue to support it as and when RTM and RTFM comes on board as well, and our latest version of the product, 7.11, are currently working on this as well. Equally, we've got great support for Windows 10. And I have to mention that because, I've told you what we're doing with Azure today, but equally, there's a lot of things we're doing going forwards. And this has all been announced, and actually some of it was demonstrated yesterday at Microsoft Ignite. But when I talked about those products earlier working in Azure, that's what they're currently doing. They do great jobs already. Going forwards, they'll be much, much more integrated into the Microsoft Azure infrastructures. So 3 key areas. I'm going to pick up on 2 of these right now, but I'm going to talk through all of them to begin with. So we look at what we're doing with Microsoft EMS and Intune. So they have an enterprise mobility solution, MDM, mobile device management, and MAM, mobile application management. And actually we do as well. We have Zen Mobile, again, mobile device management, mobile application management. So obviously 2 products, how do we fit them together? What we're going to be able to do going forwards is put the best of Zen Mobile, or some of the features of Zen Mobile, like our Works applications or our mail applications, and make them available through an EMS and Intune solution. So you get that hosted Azure service of EMS and Intune, but you also get some of the Zen Mobile applications that are great user performance, great security, that can add into that piece as well. Equally, we'll run Zen Mobile as a service for you in Azure, and that again be available through Bytes, but rather than have to maintain a Zen Mobile infrastructure on your premises, you'll be able to purchase it as a cloud infrastructure through Bytes in Azure. Equally also, what we're going to be doing is adding NetScaler into the EMS and Intune stack, and that will be there to secure access, to provide what are called micro VPNs back into Azure, so a per app VPN on your smartphone to give you access to mail, for example, or to give your secure web browser on your smartphone under mobile application management access to a website that you run in Azure seamlessly through what we call micro VPNs, which is a NetScaler function. We'll also use it to add conditional access into some of the Microsoft features as well. So that's where NetScaler and when Zen Mobile are becoming much more closely aligned and much more fundamental into Azure as well. Plus we're going to be using it in Azure to do identity and networking for Azure. We've used NetScaler to do that as well. But what I really wanted to talk about today is what we're doing around our XenApp and Zen Desktop products in Azure going forwards. So, what we're trying to achieve at the moment with Microsoft is give you that smooth transition to the cloud. So make sure you can start to put infrastructure services and have them delivered back to you and your end users from Azure, but make it really simple for you to be able to go and consume those infrastructures as well. And, we want to make sure you get the right value, make it easy for you to do, and to make it much more simple for you to be able to go and run those infrastructures. And what we're talking about is we're talking about mobility, we're talking about cloud, we're talking about desktops, we're talking about all the things I've mentioned before. So we talked about Office 365, we talked about Skype for Business, host-rich Windows applications and keeping everything in 365 but letting users access it very securely. Talked a little bit about mobility, and that's to be released, and all these things are in our future, so where we're going to integrate our products into Intune and EMS, where we're going to give more functionality into Intune and EMS by introducing NetScalers in line in Azure in front of those. We're going to start to help you to deploy hybrid environments through our NetScaler product to link your private and your public cloud together as well. But equally, we're going to help you to adopt Windows 10 as a service from Azure, delivered back to the user with a fantastic high-quality user experience using our products, but hosting Windows 10 in Azure as a service. So two things I want to talk about, and then we'll open up for Q&A. Something is a new thing we're bringing out called XenApp Express. This was announced a couple of months ago, will be available shortly, and I'll talk to us about. And this will be a version of our XenApp product, so our Windows application delivery product from Azure, from the Azure Marketplace, which means you'll be able to go in, for those of you who've looked at Remote App, it'll be available in a similar way to Remote App is available to you, but in essence for you to be able to go into Azure, request XenApp Express and have applications delivered back to you from Azure using the Citrix product with great security and a fantastic user experience that we're known for with our XenApp product. And this is all based around Microsoft announcing that they'll be discontinuing the Remote App in about just under a year's time, but also they're not just moving away from that market, but actually going and saying to all of you, well, actually, we want to go and give you the best user experience, and our way forward will be a new version of XenApp from Azure called XenApp Express. So it will match remote apps like for like, but also add a lot of additional features and functionality to deliver applications from Azure, from Microsoft, using XenApp Express. So it's not available yet. We know pricing and packaging, I know probably you can ask that question, is still to be decided. But we did demonstrate it yesterday for the very first time at Microsoft Ignite. We did start talking about it. There will be ways that for those of you currently remote app workers or users will be able to migrate across to XenApp Express. And there is going to be a XenApp Express preview available very, very shortly. So, not a lot of detail available at the moment because we're still early days. We've just, as I say, yesterday demonstrated it for the very first time. There'll be a trial available, a tech preview available before the end of this year. And for those of you who want to sign up for that trial or find out more information, you'll be able to click on the link once you get the deck and learn more and also express your interest in using the tech preview upon available. So, a great way to adopt Azure applications but get the best performance back to your end users by using the HGX technologies that we already have in our XenApp products. So that's Windows applications. What about Windows desktops? So this is a big change as well. This is, again, to be made available. You can do some of this already, but it's going to be more formalized and a more synergized, if that's even a word, synergy product between Azure and Citrix, where we'll be using Xen Desktop in Azure to deliver Windows 10 desktops as a service back to your end users with fully managed environments, and also with some options on how to license this, which will be released by Microsoft going forwards. So you will be able to move your Windows apps up into Azure and deliver them back to your users with that great user experience. We'll be able to move your Windows desktops up into Azure and again deliver them back to the end user with a great experience. And again, that's something we'll start to talk about. This is all to be commercially available next year, but there'll be again some previews around that coming very, very shortly. So again, that's kind of hopefully a good high-level overview. I'm sure there's lots and lots of questions, some of which we'll answer today. But equally, as Amy said earlier, this is a great opportunity for you to engage with Bytes, and we'll cover everything with you in more detail. So from my perspective, Amy, that's the end of the presentation. If you want to move to Q&A, if there are any questions.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Alex. Okay, I'll just open up the questions now. Yes, as mentioned previously, if you do have any questions, there's a questions box just at the right-hand side of your screen. So you could just pop those in there and I'll read them out for Alex shortly. Okay, oh gosh, we do have some questions. Okay. Okay, so a question here from Alex. What thin client requirements for peer-to-peer Skype for business in a VDI environment? Has to be Windows embedded? Has to be domain jointed thin client?
No, not necessarily. So obviously, once you're logged in, you're logging into the AD domain through XenApp or Zen Desktop. So the optimization pack only works on Windows, Mac and Linux devices at the moment. So you'd have to obviously have a device running those OSs. Plus, it doesn't always work on things like Windows Embedded, so you'd have to check with the thin client manufacturer to do the optimization pack. However, for a lot of the thin clients are HDX ready, so they will deliver you a unified communication solution. So although it won't be the Link optimization pack, Link will still work, but it won't work with all the bells and whistles I talked about earlier. To get the best answer, it's probably better to go and talk to the thin client vendor, because they will tell you which of their thin clients are HDX ready. And going forwards, some of those will also be able to run the Link optimization pack. I don't think any do currently, but that will be a to-be released feature for them going forward. So not really answering, but unfortunately you'd have to go and probably talk to your thin client manufacturer on what functions they support.
Okay, thank you. So the next question here is from Paul. He's asked, are you extending your collaboration with Autodesk into Azure with support for Autodesk products hosted in desktops or applications running on Azure? So
I can't specifically say Autodesk, but one of the things we have announced is our ability to do HDX 3D graphics from Azure. So that will be coming. I believe it was announced or talked about yesterday at Ignite. So obviously if we can do high-end 3D graphics from Azure, we'll be able to run Autodesk from there. Whether that's going to be something we aligned direct to Autodesk with going forwards, I don't know. Doesn't mean we're not. I'm just not aware of it. But certainly the technology from Azure will be available shortly to do that.
Okay, and there's another question from Paul here. He's asked, would NetScaler remove the need for AppSense when working with traditionally licensed Microsoft Office products, or do we still need to implement AppSense but in Azure?
Yes, a good question. So what we're doing with NetScaler is not at the application level. It's more at the features and functionality level to begin with. So if you think about what a NetScaler does in terms of conditional access, it's looking at the endpoint and then saying you can do things like print or save locally or clipboard map. Or plug in a USB and have it talk to the session. What AppSense does is then goes down to that application level in terms of managing Office and features within Office, which obviously we can't see. So the answer is yes. If you want anything above what I just described the NetScaler is doing, then yes, you will still need AppSense.
Okay, and the next question is from Alex regarding Windows 10 as a service. He said, is this Server 2016 with desktop experience, in brackets he's put desktop OS, not permitted on shared infrastructure like Azure and AWS?
Yeah, so there are changes coming. Obviously I don't know what those changes are to allow Windows 10 as a service in Azure, and that's part of what we're working on with Microsoft to make that. And what that becomes, I can't tell you because I don't work for Microsoft, but equally I think they're pushing towards that. We do support, we have day one support for 2016, so we will do a desktop experience in Windows Server 2016, and obviously yes, you can run that from Azure. But hopefully the plan is to allow more customers to run Windows 10 from Azure, but again that's more on the Microsoft side. And obviously functionality wise, yes, we can do that. Hopefully, in the next months or certainly the next period of time, there'll be more announcements from Microsoft around how they allow you to do that as a Windows 10 desktop.
Okay, thanks, Alex. So we have a couple of questions from Matthew. He said, XenApp Express sounds like a watered-down version of the full Citrix suite. Can you explain the pros and cons of Express over full-blown product? And also, do you have an idea of the dates for a preview and full release of XenApp Zen Desktop Express versions?
So the easiest way to think of XenApp Express is a replacement for remote apps. If you're familiar with the remote app service from Microsoft, and it will be equivalent to that. But obviously, if you want the full XenApp experience, you're absolutely right, you're probably going to be looking at XenApp Enterprise or Platinum So just to be clear on that. In terms of features and functions, we haven't made that public yet, so I can't go into that detail. But you're probably looking at a tech preview in what we call Q4, which is in essence the last 3 months of this year. But if you sign up on that page, that link I sent you earlier, you'll be able to see more details, but also you'll be made aware of when we're doing things like tech previews.
Okay, thanks, Alex. So we have another question here from Alex. He said, if we're deploying VDI on Azure now, what solution would we deploy if Citrix XenApp Express isn't available? Would he carry on deploying Azure Remote App, which isn't going end of life?
Yeah, so Remote App is still there, and you can still go and deploy Remote App. Obviously, that I think there was some announcements from Microsoft around when they're going to end of life that, and if by all means, please still talk to Microsoft about Remote App. Equally, there will be, or they will be looking to transition to XenApp Express as well in the future. So you won't obviously be penalised by looking at Remote App now and then looking at XenApp in the future. So it's XenApp Express, sorry, just to be clear, I mean not Xen Desktop Express, just in case there's any confusion around that.
Thanks, Alex. I think it looks like that's all the questions we have today.
Okay.
Yeah, so Alex, thank you so much for presenting, and everyone, thank you for joining the webinar today as well. So as mentioned previously, if you would like any more information, there's a feedback form at the end, so you can request a call back on there. And if you do have any other questions, you can submit them to our separate marketing emails. That's tellmemore@bytes.co.uk. So other than that, I think that's everything. So Alex, thank you so much, and thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.